What would you feel if, at the moment you needed someone the most in your life, you were abandoned by those you love? This is the story of Jim, who was deserted by his wife and daughter while facing terminal cancer. They left him alone, only to return years later to confirm his death, and were stunned by what they found. Let's delve into the story. Jim's life took a dramatic turn when he received the diagnosis of advanced stage cancer. This news was a severe blow to someone who had always maintained a healthy lifestyle, prioritizing a balanced diet and regular checkups. The doctor in charge couldn't pinpoint the exact origin of the cancer, leaving a cloud of uncertainty hanging over Jim. However, a glimmer of hope emerged with the mention of a slim chance. Although small, there was an opportunity to overcome the illness through intensive chemotherapy. Resolute in his life's mission, Jim grasped this chance with unwavering determination. Determined to face this daunting challenge, he prepared to share the life-altering news with the two pillars of his life: Elaine, his partner of 18 years, and Penny, his daughter, who was in the throes of adolescence. "I need to tell you something. I went to the doctor and he confirmed that it's cancer," Jim revealed. As he shared his condition, he saw the shock mirrored in their faces, a mix of disbelief and sorrow that he himself felt. In the midst of this whirlwind of emotions, Jim found the strength to be the rock that reassured them, promising that he would do everything in his power to beat the disease. "Don't worry. I know it's hard, but we will get through this together." The uncertainty about how the treatment would impact his life loomed large. Reflecting on this, Jim embraced them tightly, finding comfort and determination in their presence. He recalled the doctor's words about the challenges of chemotherapy, aware that many relationships face strain under the weight of such treatments. Feeling uncertain, he shared his fears with Elaine, his wife. "I admit, I'm a bit scared," he confessed. With the calm resolve of someone who had shared not only dreams but also their deepest struggles, she reassured him with conviction that nothing, not even the illness, would tear them apart. "Do you remember our vows, in sickness and in health?" "That's something I will uphold until the end," Elaine declared firmly. "Thank you, truly," Jim responded, relieved. He was able to focus on his recovery without the burden of financial worries, thanks to solid savings and insurance, as well as a significant inheritance and a trust fund left by his grandfather. His family had financial reserves for situations like this, and their home, filled with memories where his daughter had grown up, was secure. Penny's academic future was also ensured with funds set aside for her education, with practical preparations in place in case the worst happened. Jim began chemotherapy a week after his diagnosis, starting a treatment regimen that would push him to his limits with each session, a grueling test of endurance, leaving him exhausted and nearly unrecognizable to himself. Now frail, returning home became a ritual of self-overcoming. The simple acts of eating, bathing, or walking transformed into daily battles against an invisible enemy that drained all his energy. In this new reality, Elaine and Penny didn't hesitate to offer all the help he needed. With love and care, they took over household responsibilities, prepared meals with even more dedication, and accompanied him to every chemotherapy session, ensuring no medical prescription was forgotten. In every gesture, in every look of support, they silently affirmed an unwavering commitment that while the illness might affect his body, it could not touch the love that bound them. Jim was acutely aware of how his health could impact the atmosphere at home. He strove to be as self-sufficient as possible, performing tasks during his moments of higher energy. Despite his persistent efforts over 2 months, Jim noticed a change in Elaine and Penny's behavior. The atmosphere, once characterized by solidarity, had become tense. Reluctant sighs preceded their offers of help, and at times Penny avoided simple requests, like bringing him a glass of water or accompanying him for a walk outside. "Penny, how about we take a stroll in the yard? I'd like to enjoy some sunshine," Jim suggested. "Oh, Dad, I have some schoolwork to do right now. Maybe later, okay?" she replied. However, the full extent of these changes hit him one morning after a chemotherapy session when Elaine suggested he take a taxi home. The suggestion, delivered so coldly, surprised him, but he complied. Upon returning home, he could no longer ignore the growing emotional distance. After a few hours of rest and gathering his strength, Jim initiated a difficult conversation. "I'll get straight to the point. I've noticed some changes in your behavior. Can you be honest with me? We need to be transparent about our current situation," Jim expressed. Elaine responded, "Dear, it's not that we're disregarding your suffering, but we're feeling a bit overwhelmed with all the usual tasks, plus the new ones." Jim understood. "I completely get it. I also hate having to ask for help with everything, so I thought about hiring a nurse. Many people do that. My uncle chose this solution when he had hip surgery." Penny and Elaine agreed to the suggestion, and the following week, the new nurse, Leslie, started working at their home. However, the solution meant to bring relief ended up creating a new problem. Elaine felt somewhat replaced and experienced jealousy over the nurse's constant presence. Noticing this, Jim, always the peacemaker, proposed that Elaine resume some of the caregiving duties as much as possible. Unfortunately, this approach didn't have the desired effect, and the problem persisted. Amid this whirlwind of emotions and misunderstandings, Jim chose to maintain his calm, aware that increasing negativity could complicate his already challenging path to recovery. One late-night phone call added another layer to this emotionally charged situation. It was his mother's concerned voice, expressing her disapproval of another woman living in her daughter's home. "Jim, I understand your situation, but think about what the neighbors will say. I don't want my daughter to be the subject of gossip," she remarked. Jim responded, "She is just a professional, and everyone understands that." His mother-in-law persisted, "No, Jim, things don't work that way." The discussion turned into a labyrinth of emotions and responsibilities, where every decision seemed to trigger an unexpected consequence. Amid this storm of feelings, Jim remained steadfast, focusing on his health and hoping for better days, when physical complications wouldn't mirror emotional ones. To maintain some peace in his home, which had always been a sanctuary, Jim decided to face the situation with his usual dignified stance. Despite his illness and the exhaustion from treatments, he sought understanding and support from his loved ones, reminding himself of his role as the family's provider, even during his illness. Gently but firmly, Jim explained to Elaine, "I understand your concerns, but you need to trust me. This is just temporary, and for now, I need Leslie's help." "I understand. It's all right then," Elaine agreed. Seemingly determined to accept the situation, a day after a chemotherapy session, Jim encountered a scene that would forever be etched in his memory. A moving truck had quietly parked in front of his house. Jim approached Elaine and asked with a mix of surprise and apprehension, "What's going on? What does this mean? Why, Elaine?" Jim asked, his face a mix of surprise and apprehension. She responded, "This is the best solution I found. Penny and I are going to live with my mother while you recover. If you need anything, just ask Leslie." "Are you really going to leave me like this?" Jim questioned, feeling a deep sense of betrayal. "Like you said, it's only temporary," she replied, turning back to pack their belongings into the truck, showing a seemingly unshakable resolve at that moment. Jim, on his part, felt a profound sadness and struggled to express the confusion of emotions that plagued him deeply. The fatigue acted as a sort of cover, slightly dulling the intensity of his anguish, perhaps as a defense against a reality that would otherwise have been unbearable. In the eerie silence of his home, now strangely quiet, without the laughter and affection of his family, he faced the most painful situation of his life. His battle against the disease, filled with challenges that transcended the physical, was now compounded by the abandonment of his wife and daughter at his most vulnerable moment. This episode revealed a side of his marriage that Jim might have preferred not to acknowledge until then, holding on to the hope of better days. The family support, especially from his brother Joey, and the affectionate presence of Leslie, the nurse, provided Jim with a sense of community and solidarity. The care and dedication from Leslie were not only practical, but also served as comfort for the emotional wounds caused by his illness and the abandonment by his wife. When the nurse finally rang the hospital bell to signify his physical recovery, it symbolized much more than the end of a relationship that failed to provide the unconditional support he had hoped for. Jim's decision to unilaterally seek a divorce represented not only a step toward emotional independence, but also an affirmation of his dignity and self-worth. Besides being a legal move, it was a way for him to assert himself and recognize his own value. He meticulously prepared all the necessary documents and sent them to his mother-in-law's address. Now, Jim could focus on building a future centered not only on physical healing, but also on emotional recovery. Surrounded by people who had shown genuine empathy and support during his difficult times. Even though the road ahead might hold uncertainties and challenges, he was certain he was regaining control of his life, deciding who would be part of his journey of recovery and personal growth. More than a year had passed since he defeated the illness, and Jim felt ready to move forward. He reached out to his old job, and they agreed to have him back, even working remotely. Accepting the offer, he appreciated his home, but associated many bad memories with it, and sought a fresh start in a better place. Generously, Jim planned to donate his house to Leslie, the nurse who had been a great support during the tough times, showing remarkable kindness even to a stranger. Jim's new beginning in a different neighborhood was not just a change of address. It was an opportunity to rewrite his story after a turbulent and painful period. His ability to adapt and find comfort in new routines and friendships revealed his resilience and the human desire for connection and purpose, even after traumatic experiences. He established a friendship with his neighbor Gloria, who not only offered companionship, but also brought a perspective that life could still hold meaning after shocking losses, such as the death of a loved one or the end of a relationship believed to be eternal. The conversations between them provided a shared ground of understanding and mutual support, something only those who have experienced similar losses can offer each other. His hobby transcended the role of a mere pastime and became a form of therapy, a way to create order and beauty from raw materials. This paralleled the process of reconstruction in his own life, taking the broken pieces and building something new and solid. His pursuit of new tools symbolized the search for skills and experiences that would help him shape his new reality. Remarkably, even after moving past the absence of his wife and daughter, the fact that he had no news from them remained a notable point in his story, suggesting that, although he had recovered and progressed, there were still unresolved threads. One day, after visiting the materials shop, Gloria shared a concerning observation with Jim. "I need to tell you something very important. Yesterday, while I was returning home, I saw two women, one older and one younger, lingering around your house. They knocked several times, walked around, and since you weren't there, they got into a car and waited. After some time, they left. I thought about calling the police, but I figured they might be your relatives and I didn't want to cause trouble. Since they didn't come back after you arrived, I thought it was best to inform you. I couldn't see clearly, but the older one seemed to be around 60 years old, tall with light hair. The younger one was slightly shorter with dark hair that reached her waist. As Jim listened, he felt a chill run down his spine. The descriptions matched those of his wife and daughter. A wave of confusion took over his thoughts. How had they found his whereabouts? After all, only his brother knew the address of his current residence. Jim began to ponder the possible reasons that might have led his wife and daughter to seek him out, especially after leaving almost a year ago without even a final glance. Gloria offered to handle the situation discreetly if the two women reappeared. However, Jim hesitated to expose himself to the pain of rejection once more, especially now that the memories of the abandonment period still echoed in his mind. As the night progressed and a starry blanket covered the sky, Jim sought answers by calling his faithful brother, Joey. "Jim, we need to talk. Elaine and Penny are back." "Are you sure about what you're telling me, Joey?" Jim asked. "Yes, I'm at your house now with Leslie. When they found out you had transferred the house to her name, they were furious. They broke some things in the garden and threatened Leslie. She's scared. Tomorrow morning, we're going to the police." "Oh my God, how can this be happening? You need to be careful too, so you don't get tracked down." "I almost found them here," Joey replied. "They showed up yesterday while I was at a carpentry event. Gloria witnessed everything." Jim felt a slight relief, knowing that Leslie had the documents proving the property transfer, a transaction he had completed to close that chapter of his life. He called Leslie directly. "Leslie, I'm so sorry. I didn't know this would happen." "Don't worry, I understand, but I need to tell you something," Leslie replied. "When they came, we argued a lot. I ended up telling them you had died and that you left the house to me. They didn't believe me. Somehow they found your new address. I just wanted them to leave you in peace. It's okay. It was bound to happen. My ex-wife might not have acknowledged the divorce notice I sent to her mother's house, or just discarded it as another piece of unimportant paper," Jim said. He had faced indifference before and had come to a place of serene acceptance. The next morning, as Jim busied himself with daily tasks, he was alerted by the persistent sound of knocking. He quickly checked the security cameras and confirmed that his ex-wife looked just as he remembered. Meanwhile, his daughter Penny had grown into a young woman, her features marking the passage of time. Following the plan he had agreed upon with Gloria, Jim stayed inside the house but moved close enough to the door to catch snippets of the external conversation. Gloria stepped out of her house and approached them, greeting them warmly, showing openness and kindness, leaving behind the burdens of the past. "Hello, how are you? Are you new around here?" Gloria greeted them warmly. "Yes, we're just passing through. You've lived here for a long time, right? Can you tell us if a man named Jim lived in this house?" Jim's ex-wife asked, weaving a story about her husband, or ex-husband, who had supposedly lived in the house until his recent death after a long stay in the hospital. They took Jim by surprise, since there was no evidence of his death or any hospital stay, a fact he was well aware of. The only source of this story was Leslie, who had fabricated it. Gloria, calm and direct, replied, "Oh yes, Jim. He lived here a few months ago, but unfortunately, he died of cancer. He mentioned he moved here after being abandoned by his wife, and his daughter ended up leaving too." Elaine said that the misunderstanding revolved around a girlfriend of Jim who had recently moved into the house. Gloria, always composed, mentioned that according to her recollection, Jim planned to leave his inheritance to charitable causes since he was divorced and had no close relatives, except for a brother. This brother, witnessing two women examining the house, expressed surprise. not understanding the context. A tense silence settled until Gloria sought clarification. She inquired, "Do you have a death certificate or any will?" Their refusal only increased the uncertainty in the air. Gloria, always practical, advised on the necessary legal procedures. "It's crucial to have these documents. Just go to the notary, and if needed, the rightful owners can get the house deed in their names." Jim's ex-wife reacted negatively to this advice, raising her voice and accusing Gloria. "Who do you think you are? Stay out of what doesn't concern you." Her words, laden with hostility, echoed in the environment, disturbing the peace of the street that had welcomed Jim with such warmth, even though he remained hidden behind the walls of his house. Despite feeling the urge to confront his ex-wife about her erratic behavior, Jim stayed firm on the plan agreed upon with Gloria. "Please don't misunderstand me," Gloria responded gently, trying to diffuse the situation. "I'm trying to help. I never intended to offend you," explained Gloria. After a few minutes, they walked away. When the conversation ended and silence returned, it was a relief. Seeking refuge in Gloria's house, Jim expressed his sincere regret. "Thank you, Gloria. Please accept my apologies for my ex-wife's behavior. I truly had no idea this would happen." "No problem," Gloria responded. "I must admit it was a bit amusing to see her lose her patience. I wish I could stay as calm as you, but I know what she's capable of when she's angry, and I imagine she'll be back tomorrow." As Jim focused on his carpentry studies, a sudden noise startled him. When he went outside, he found the window shattered and his ex-wife in the garden, furiously breaking the glass while neighbors tried to restrain her. It seemed she was causing a disturbance, but Jim, distracted by his work and wearing headphones, hadn't noticed the commotion. Upon exiting, he saw two elderly neighbors trying to hold her back to prevent further damage. "Please, ma'am, stop, don't do this," the neighbors pleaded. Penny and Elaine, armed with iron bars, had already damaged the plants he had carefully grown in pots. Jim swiftly and firmly grabbed her arm, questioning if she had lost her mind, his surprise evident. They thought he was dead and only wanted to intimidate the supposed new owner. "You two, step back now," Jim commanded. "How can this be? We thought you were dead." "Why didn't you contact us when you recovered?" Elaine shouted. "Why should I explain anything to someone who broke the promise to stand by my side in wealth and poverty, in sickness and health? And Penny? How could you do this to your own daughter?" Jim responded, the weight of each word heavy. "She looks just like you. She abandoned me too. I'm willing to give up my rights as a father and guardian. You should have thought of that before abandoning me," he said firmly. "I want no further ties with either of you." At these words, her sadness turned to fury. "You are heartless and selfish," she exclaimed, which to Jim sounded deeply ironic given the situation. Raising his voice in response, Jim declared, "You are nothing but an opportunist. I want nothing more to do with you, and I will use every means necessary to ensure I don't have to give you a single cent." In that tense moment, she raised the iron bar menacingly toward him. It was at this critical moment that the police arrived and acted without hesitation. His ex-wife and daughter, Penny, were arrested, and when asked if he wanted to file a formal complaint, Jim didn't hesitate. "Yes, officer. I'd like to accompany them to the station in the same car," he agreed. As mother and daughter were led away, their tears increased, but he remained unmoved. The entire scene had been captured by his security cameras, including the moment his ex-wife broke the window. The video was already in the hands of the police. At the end of the day, with calmer spirits, Jim arranged for the window to be replaced and the mess to be cleaned up. A temporary cover was installed to protect the house from the elements, while Gloria lent him pots for the surviving plants. "It seems your ex isn't a fan of plants, but honestly, her face wouldn't even make good fertilizer," Gloria joked. Jim sighed lightly, and she laughed, commenting, "In any case, I'm relieved it all ended well. I can't even imagine what would have happened if she had hit me with that iron bar." Curious about what had driven his ex-wife to return, Jim began searching for answers. It didn't take long for him to uncover the truth. The recent death of his mother-in-law had set off a series of disastrous events, revealing that the house they lived in wasn't theirs, but belonged to the mother's ex-husband. With the passing of the ex-mother-in-law, the property was to be transferred to a nephew who decided to sell it. With no alternatives, mother and daughter sold their belongings and stayed in a hotel. When they returned to Jim's former house, they encountered Leslie, who explained the situation. Jim was already aware of this. They had discovered his new address with the help of neighbors, thinking that since the divorce was unilateral, they might obtain some compensation. However, they needed to confirm if he was alive or dead. This confusion led to accusations of vandalism, attempted break-ins, and assault. Penny, being a minor, was sentenced to community service, while his ex-wife faced a harsher penalty due to the premeditated nature of the crime. Facing this scenario, Jim considered seeking a restraining order, at least temporarily, to ensure there would be no more surprises. Thus, Jim continued his life, healing from the pain of abandonment, while his ex-wife and daughter also learned from the experience. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to leave a like and comment your thoughts. Your opinion is very important to us. Thank you very much.